squirrel in the picture at the top here, and some lovely countryside. So inside we have warm harvest fruit puddings, yum, jewels from the woodland floor, and discovering Jane Austen's countryside. I really like this magazine because you can get some really good ideas for paintings and things like that. The colours in it are wonderful. Some of the photographs are gorgeous. So we have in the garden, in the kitchen, craft and home, country matters, history and heritage, and then some regular bits and pieces, readers' letters and that kind of thing. Look at that lovely owl. Our landscape. Oh, look at that gorgeous photograph. Lovely colours. A lasting show for a glorious burst of late flowering colour. Nothing beats the dahlia. Beautiful. So the garden in September and October. Let's have a little look at this. Says evening shadows lengthen. Now in the lowering golden light, plants festooned with spider webs are spangled with glittering drops of morning dew. The autumn scent of earth and decaying leaves is in the air as our garden gears up for this year's finale. There are some key late flowering plants for colour, including that autumn mainstay, the aster, which also provides nectar for later flying butterflies. There is a harmony in autumn and a lustre in its sky, which through the summer is not heard or seen. That was a quote from Percy Bysshe Shelley, Hymn to Intellectual Beauty. That's a lovely watercolour image of Narcissus by Sydenham Teast Edwards from 1810. That's pretty. Love your birds. If you have an abundance of bruised or fallen fruit under your apple tree, put it to good use with this pretty hanging bird feeder. Made from galvanized metal, it will bring a charming shaker-style look to your garden, as well as more feathered visitors. When your apple stock is used up, use a suet ball or scatter the central feeding tray Paris exhibition held in London in 1910 grew them on their estates. Kew and Tatton Park still have fine examples. Look at these, gorgeous. So the top one, let's see top to bottom, is Acer japonicum vitifolium or fine-leaved maple. respected traditional cider makers since the mid-1980s, but their venture into cider brandy wasn't always straightforward. After facing a long, frustrating battle to gain it, the drink now has the vital full appellation Control A status, which means that Somerset cider brandy is officially defined by the region it comes from. The orchards at Julian's farm are proudly traditional. The trees are mature and fully grown, as opposed to the short-lived or high-density dwarf or bush fruit trees that are found in many modern commercial orchards. He does not use pesticides, and the grass in the orchards is kept short by a herd of grazing sheep. Making the brandy begins in October, after ripened apples have been allowed to fall to the ground and rest on the grass. This is the true and traditional method of cider making, allowing the apples to ferment on the ground rather than turning the juice into concentrate. By law, we must include at least 20 varieties of apple in each bottle. Wow, I didn't know that. Which are being grown in non-intensive orchards, said Julian. Allowing the apples to ripen on the ground is essential to our process. Fermentation begins when they fall and starch is converted to sugar. You get more juice and more sugar this way, which makes for a better quality. When the apples are gathered and washed, the process of making the brandy begins. The method Julian uses contained in an ancient almanac, the Treaty of Cider, published in 1668, which has a passage referring to the discovery of cider brandy. And you may, after due fermentation, extract spirits, vulgarly called brandy, in great plenty, and very excellent. To make this excellent brandy, the juices from all the varieties of apples must be perfectly blended. English apples are classified as bitter sweets, sweet sharps and bitter sharps, and getting the balance right is a tricky business. Stoke Red, for example, is a tiny bitter sharp apple, and Harry Master's Jersey has a bittersweet flavour. Once crushed and blended, the juice from the apples is fermented in oak vats for 6 months to become cider. This is then kept in one of 2 gleaming old copper stills to distill, which removes the colour from the liquid and produces a condensed pure spirit known as eau de vie, or water of life. By order of customs and excise, the stills with their valuable contents are highly protected behind armour-plated glass and 68 locks and seals. Wow! The liquid is then stored in wooden barrels, a crucial part of the process during which the brandy absorbs the subtle flavours of the oak. The making of good brandy is a question of time and barrels, Julian says. Different wood imparts sounds really nice. And we've got more. Ooh, toffee pears. Makes 8 pears. You need pears, 400 grams of golden caster sugar, 1 teaspoon of white wine or cider vinegar, 4 tablespoons of golden syrup, and 8 wooden sticks. They look so nice. A plum and port ice cream. Lovely and rich. Now, not so sure about this. Blackberry omelette. No, I don't know about that. Fruit in an omelette. Maybe fruit in a pancake, but not just in an omelette. Ooh, edible leaves. These delicate leafed shaped biscuits make an unusual accompaniment to afternoon tea. They are unusual. Look quite crispy as well. So do you have to have a leaf cutter? Yes, you do. They look nice though. The biscuits will keep for up to 2 weeks in an airtight container. Not in my house. They'd be eaten within 2 weeks, no problem. Jewels from the woodland floor. That's really pretty, isn't it? Place settings. Congas gathered on a country walk are a natural way to bring seasonal decoration to the home. Congas will naturally dry and harden when left in an airy spot and will keep indefinitely. Leaving congas around the house is also said to keep spiders at bay. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, teacup lamp. Look, the shade is a teacup. That's unusual. Windsor Castle, where she